nor navio. Move in accordance with your breathing, Okara. Dakar, mind your footwork. Otillo, how many times must I tell you never to leave yourself exposed unless you're trying to faint? Maintain your swinging cadence, Andaj, Cynthia Winfield chastised as she easily blocked an attack made by Declan Oakmoon. To his credit, the nobleman used his momentum to quickly slide his sword to the left in an attempt to nick her armor and land a hit. It was a sound move, but one made too late and with hesitation. Instead of counterattacking or sweeping him off his feet, she opted to merely make a physical demonstration of one of his constant failings. In a swift motion, she forced the sword out of his grip, then quickly turned the dull training sword against him, placing the edge against his exposed neck. You have skill, Oakmoon, but it was wasted in your lackluster performance. Your hesitance can and has cost you dearly, and your grip on your blade is too soft, easy to counter and break. Gracefully, she twirled the blade around as if it were nothing, only to offer the handle to him. Declan took it, nodded once, and took a few steps back, ready to attack again. Glancing to her right, she found her sixth charge trying to put into practice her swordsmanship lessons with little to no success. It hurt her soul to see every dreadful mistake in motion. His footing has improved marginally through practice, but I doubt it'll get any better than it is now. I am physically ill watching him strike that dummy. Oh, Tobias Winfield, grant me the patience not to repeat myself, for you know as much as I do that Wyatt won't improve. His blows are unbalanced even if they strike true. His footwork is uneven. His grip is inconsistent. His approach is dreadful. Just look at all the openings he gives so freely. Cynthia winced internally as she deflected Declan's strike, nearly causing him to tumble to the side. She'd lost any hope of turning Wyatt into a capable swordman or even a passable one. He simply had no skill or talent with the sword. Or axes, or hammers. Not even the ever-so-humble spear was somehow beyond his capabilities. It wasn't a matter of lack of practice or dedication. He simply wasn't suited for it. A little sigh escaped past her lips as Wyatt connected a hit on the dummy's neck, only for his sword to almost slip from his grip. Her only solace was that he wasn't entirely defenseless if a sword duel ever came into play. With a sidestep, she dodged another attack aimed at her shoulder. Not much better, but at least there wasn't any significant hesitation that she could notice. To reward the Oakmoon, she broke into a lower stance in the blink of an eye before delivering a punch to his exposed stomach, just hard enough to cause him to gasp and stumble back. Better. Retake your position. Otillo, come forth. Ma'am, Raquel replied, trading places with Declan. Tightening the grip on her practice sword, she took a deep breath, adopting a rather loose stance. She weaved from side to side slightly before launching herself forward. Her strike was swift, aiming at Cynthia's midsection. The blue-haired woman blocked it with her sword, flowing with the motion to grab her neck and squeeze it gently, just enough to get a choked gasp out of the bronze-skinned woman. Gah! Don't leave yourself exposed unless you have no other choice, Cynthia said before letting go of her neck. Good footwork. Work on it more, and we'll be ready to move to more advanced training routines. Given your style, you will only continue to keep your swordsmanship at an adequate level. Starting tomorrow, I'll begin to train you in proper knife combat. You already prefer it. There's no point in trying to force the sword on you anymore. Raquel rubbed her neck but nodded respectfully at the same time. Taking a step back, she raised her sword, going in for her second strike. It didn't go any better than the first attempt, and she ended up landing on her ass after a quick sweep broke her balance. It wasn't in the least glorious, but it was far from the worst humiliating defeat she'd gotten at the hands of the walking tank that was Cynthia Winfield. Gregor moved in next, his expression reflecting how much he'd rather do quite literally anything else, but he'd never go against an order given by a superior. Regardless, he took a firm, solid stance. Instead of rushing in, much like Declan and Raquel had done, he moved in with an even pace, ready to defend himself in the chance his opponent made the first offensive move. Cynthia sighed internally at the display. His fencing training was to be applauded. In duels of honor and to settle minor disputes, he'd perform admirably. But fencing wasn't the same as fighting. Worst of all, he knew it. But it was clear he didn't enjoy close-quarters combat at all. She quickly showed him the error of his ways by delivering a merciful feint that opened a window for a quick disarming move that caught him off guard. She wasn't sure what to do about him, but she'd find a use for him. He didn't lack courage at the very least. With a single glance, Gregor understood his turn had come and gone. Next came Leopold, breathing deeply as he rolled his shoulders and gripped his axes tightly. Taking a solid stance, he waited for a few seconds before moving in to strike, nearly lunging at her. Unlike Raquel and Gregor, Leopold had begun to learn how to avoid leaving himself completely exposed as he attacked. His movements lacked finesse and were simple yet effective, that much she could praise. She blocked the first strike with her sword, deflecting the axe as he quickly parried the second blow, only then to deliver a soft shoulder push against his chest, making the pilot stumble back a few steps. "Your footwork, Dakar," she reminded him, as his lackluster balance control was far, far from improving to any significant degree. Leopold lunged in again, this time abandoning practicality for a completely useless spinning maneuver. Cynthia dashed forth and behind him, matching his momentum and placing herself forever outside his reach. With the sword's pommel, she struck at his side, breaking his balance as he then stumbled over, hitting the mat. Only fools and arrogant, mindless idiots rely on useless, ostentatious parlor tricks. Leave such pointless techniques to acrobats, entertainers, movies, and animated series. Understood, Dakar? "I obey," Leopold replied with a groan as he rolled over and shakily stood up. "I guess it's my turn to get intimate with the floor," Nultar joked, chuckling emptily as he gave Leopold a hand. Pulling his friend to his feet, he patted him on his shoulder before moving in to take his position. Spinning his sword around a few times, he chose to take a lower stance with his sword pointed at Cynthia. He closed his eyes for a second, inhaling deeply through his nostrils. Cynthia knew what was coming next. It was a good yet risky move that, against an opponent of a similar level to his own or inferior, would likely result in his victory. As expected, Nultar exploded outward, all but leaping like an animal ready to either strike a kill or be killed in turn. To untrained eyes, the attack was a mere desperate lunge. But to her, it was a sound, if reckless move that left him basically defenseless. Instead of a simple lunge guided by the blind hope of impaling your enemy, Nultar quickly changed his grip, and his lunge suddenly turned into an upward cut. She dodged it, approving of his choice, posture, form, and footwork. It was a near-flawless execution for someone who wasn't a trained Marine, shock troop, or Royal Army officer. He failed to follow up his attack with a retreat or another strike, but she couldn't fault him for his lack of response. Instead, she rewarded his performance by merely tapping his throat with her sword, signaling his defeat. "That was an acceptable performance, Okara. Well done." "Thank you, Lady Cynthia," Nultar replied, moving to retake his position before the training dummy next to Leopold. Their training routine with weapons was always the same. Spend 10 minutes practicing strikes, stances, and postures before going through a gauntlet of defeats against the red-armored woman. Rinse and repeat for an hour. When he arrived at his position, while the blue-haired woman silently continued to watch their progress, he cleared his throat and spoke in a barely audible voice. "Where does she get all that energy from?" Leopold shrugged. "I don't know. Even with the implants I got now, I can't hope to match her stamina. She's not even winded. Training us must feel like a joke to her," he replied in that same hushed volume, his voice carrying a tone that was a mix of humor and resignation. Nultar nodded once. "She's a Winfield, Leo. That aside, I don't even want to imagine how much genetic editing or what implants she's got to be at her level. Of course we're fodder to her. But look at it this way. We're getting the deadliest Winfield and likely a one-woman army training us. Even if we never reach her shadow, we'll still be better than most. It truly is an honor. Now I understand why my great-grandfather praised the Winfields so much. They truly live up to their reputation as the Astor's blue-haired demons." Leopold couldn't stifle a chuckle. "Can't argue with that. But I still wish she'd take it easier on us." Nultar shook his head. "Trust me, Leo, she's already taking it as easy as she can. She's only sent Wyatt to the medical wing one time." Maybe so. But I got this gut feeling that she takes pleasure in proving she's better than us," he huffed. "Typical blue blood air, you know?" Nultar hitched a breath, nearly dropping his sword. "Don't you ever say that out loud, Leo. For your sake, keep those thoughts to yourself, idiot." But it was too late. Unbeknownst to them, Cynthia was perfectly capable of hearing their chatter. She didn't take real offense at Leopold's words. He had spoken from a commoner's perspective. Perhaps one more spoken than most, and she had, admittedly, heard worse things in whispered murmurs. Even Wyatt now spoke privately with more security, and his scalding tongue could earn him a noose. His head mounted on a pike should arrogant nobles hear such inflammatory claims. She did, however, take personal insult to the training she was imparting to them. Slowly she made her way to Leopold in a slow, glacial pace until she stood behind a now trembling Leopold Dakar, trying his best to ignore her presence. Leaning down until her lips were an inch apart from his ear, she asked in a sweet, melodious tone, "Is that what you believe?" In an instant, Leopold was on a knee, trembling, in a complete show of submission. Everyone else stopped what they were doing. From humans to Ikanti, everyone turned to witness what was happening. Placing a hand on his shoulder, Cynthia continued. "Tell me, Leopold Dakar, do you truly believe so?" I'm terribly sorry, my lady." "I meant no disrespect," Leopold stuttered as his heart raced violently in his chest. "I believe you. But a lesson must be imparted," Cynthia revealed, letting go of his shoulder. "Rise." "Composters, Oakmoon, gather," she said, and everyone, including Wyatt, obeyed. "My training is unfair to all of you. This I know. You can't hope to match me in any capacity, but I take no joy in seeing you suffer. Is it not better to bleed and sweat now than regret it on the battlefield?" Her eyes flickered for a moment, then she continued. "Allow me to give you a demonstration of what I've tried to impart to you." "Lady Cynthia, please, it was I who—" Nultar began, but was cut off by Cynthia's gaze. "You ignited the conversation, but it is Dakar who spoke out of turn. An observation was made from a perspective lacking wisdom. Such is, no punishment can be given by my hand. Baron Staples, your knight has allowed his tongue to slip past his teeth without proper consideration. A minor offense, nothing more, but one that must be rectified. I shall leave his punishment for you to decide." Wyatt looked at a nervous Leopold, his hands shaking uncontrollably. "I will, Lady Cynthia." 3 days with half rations shall be enough to rake in his slippery tongue. Leopold met his gaze, but was smart enough to shut his mouth tight and avoid getting a worse punishment. For the next 5 minutes, the composters and Declan waited until 4 Royal Marines entered the gymnasium. Upon their arrival, the room went silent once again. Without saying anything, the Royal Marines entered the training area, drawing their swords. Cynthia turned to face them, handing her training sword to Wyatt as the group instinctively moved back to give them space. She drew her sword as the 4 Royal Marines surrounded her. The air was thick and the tension was high. Everyone could feel it. Not a sound was made as Cynthia took a defensive stance, firm and solid with no openings. Wyatt froze as all 5 swords were activated, their edges promising a swift death with their eerie glow. But he could feel it, the focus, the killing intent of the 4 Royal Marines. Before he could voice his protest, they charged. He could barely follow their movements. They were so incredibly fast and precise. The 1st Royal Marine moved with grace and speed. Each step, each single little movement made was calculated, never left to luck or chance. The strike came, but Cynthia blocked it with a riposte. The Royal Marine lost his balance for a moment, long enough for the blue-haired woman to move with the grace he was familiar with in time to dodge 2 simultaneous swings. Never losing her momentum or footing, she blocked a 4th attack, forcing the Royal Marine to step back to recover his momentum. The first one joined in, recovered, aiming for Cynthia's neck, but she deflected his sword with her own, moving in closer to grab his throat and force him out of balance. The Royal Marine was strong, but she was stronger, and she floored him with a strong impact on the mat that echoed across the gymnasium. Then she turned to the 2nd and 3rd Royal Marines, trading deflecting strikes with them in a flurry of movement that the heterochromatic man could barely register. He wasn't good with the sword or other melee weapons, but that didn't mean he couldn't see the skill in others. There were no fanciful movements, no wasteful posturing. It was a battle, plain and simple, where every action counted and any mistake could be the last. Victory or defeat, life or death. There was nothing else to it. The 4th Royal Marine joined in, striking from behind. A cowardly move, many would say, but in his head it made sense. There was no reason to fight fairly. Never was. Cynthia, however, saw it coming as she spun on her heel, meeting the strike and stopping it before using her momentum to deliver a kick to the offending attacker, sending him to the ground 2 meters away. Then she focused on the remaining 2 Royal Marines, and the tempo of the battle shifted instantly. She moved on the offensive while the Royal Marines tried their best to counter her. They did their best, but Cynthia dominated them, forcing them to move as she commanded, lest they would be cut down in an instant for their insolence. She kept the pressure on them, never relenting, never stopping, until the 3rd Royal Marine broke away, attempting to impale her with a lunge aimed at her gut. Cynthia replied with a dodge followed by a quick knee to her stomach, stopping the Royal Marine. Then, with the 4th and final Royal Marine left standing, she completely overpowered him, never giving him a chance. It was over in 5 strikes, ending with him being forced to let go of his sword as it was flung upward, only for Cynthia to present her sword against his throat and catch the falling sword with her other hand. Victory was hers. And it had only taken 20 seconds. All of that in only 20 seconds. Wyatt and the rest of his companions released a breath they didn't know they were holding as they watched Cynthia aid the Royal Marines back to their feet, their identities obscured by their helmets. They didn't exchange words in public, but he knew they were having a conversation through the network. It was confirmed when they all simultaneously hit their chests twice, Cynthia included, only for the Royal Marines to leave unceremoniously a moment later. Wyatt noticed only then that her armor had been active as the green lines of power died down. "That," Cynthia began, her breath only ever so slightly showing she was barely winded, "if that is how I would show my superiority over all of you if that was my objective. True overwhelming force. Do you see the difference now, Dakar?" "Transparently, Lady Cynthia," he said, his trembling returning. "Return to your positions. Your princess deserves the best I can make you," Cynthia ordered with an air of authority. None objected. "Nornavio, Composter's Quarters, Training Room." "This is impossible!" cried out Leopold as his fighter was destroyed and the simulation ended. "What sort of simulations are these?" "Careful now, Leo. You wouldn't want to extend your punishment to a full week now, would you?" teased Raquel through their shared channel. Nultar's snickering could be heard a second later. "As if you did any better. You were the first to go down. Besides, I didn't know she could actually hear us. I'm never going to open my mouth around her. I knew she had good hearing back at the beach, but not that good," he shuddered, crossing his arms. "Serves me right. Filthy commoner opening his trap when he shouldn't. She's beautiful, but so damn terrifying. Guess I should be grateful I didn't get any lashings or worse." "You should, you incompetent idiot. Complaining is one of your finest skills. But have I not warned you that it would get you in trouble sooner or later?" Gregor chastised as he watched Wyatt's fighter be destroyed a moment later. He frowned deeply as their leader joined them. "Sir, why did you let yourself be destroyed?" Wyatt sighed. "There was nothing else I could do. The pirates were upon me, and 2 defense satellites were still active. There was no point in continuing." "Are you sure these are actual training lessons and not some sort of torture, Wyatt?" "This is the 3rd simulation we've attempted to best, and we've failed all of them," Nultar pointed out. "What use would simulations passed down by a lone wolf be if they were easy to surpass?" countered Raquel firmly. "Then what are they supposed to teach us?" "How to fail miserably," Nultar argued back. "I know defeat is part of the process, but this is simply unfair. And there are another 57 simulations like these first 3 waiting for us. Lone wolf or not, this can't be right." In accordance with Maximilian's memoirs, he bested each and every single one of these singularly commissioned simulations. He never knew what they contained until he tested them, and he didn't achieve victory on his first try on any of them either. "It is a shame that we cannot join in as one squadron, but the lessons imparted will prove invaluable for us," explained Gregor in a calm, analytical tone. "Invaluable or not, they are a pain," complained Leopold. "It would be easier if we had that monster of a fighter instead of a regular raptor fighter." "I believe that's the point of these simulations," said Wyatt, pinching his chin. "Not every simulation is combat-focused. There are some focused on escaping, others on evading a patrol without being noticed, and even escort and diplomatic missions that forbid the use of violence." He hummed deeply for a moment. "Yet the same problem remains. Maximilian always acted on his own. I didn't find a single simulation where he fights alongside a squadron. The closest thing is Simulation 37, a large-scale pitch battle." "Is it really a surprise?" "Lone wolves operate alone, don't they?" Leopold asked, unsure. "No, it isn't," Wyatt replied. "These simulations are hard. It'll take us several attempts to clear each one. It'll help us sharpen our skills, but the real goal is always the same: to claim all the glory for achieving victory," he thought with disdain. He was grateful for the treasure trove Maximilian had delivered upon him, but that didn't mean his opinion on glory-seeking and honor-starved objectives had changed for the better. If anything, he loathed them even more. But what could he learn from Maximilian's teachings? What could they all learn? Their individual skills as pilots would increase. That much was an undeniable certainty, but the real challenge would be to apply those lessons as a squadron, to coordinate with one another after everything was said and done. These simulations were designed to be operated by a single user at a time. There is no interconnection, but there are 5 of us trying to solve the same problem, he thought as an idea formed in his mind. A hunch. A sense of direction. It was enough to start with. Let's try the first simulation again. This time we'll keep our communication channel open. We can't coordinate as a squadron, but we can try to support each other through advices. After we're defeated, we can discuss our strategies and other ways we can approach the battle. Then we'll run another attempt. If we can't act together, then we'll look at the problem with 5 sets of eyes, exclaimed the Lieutenant Commodore. Sir, his squad mates replied, ready to follow his command. Navio, Officer's Lounge. Galt Tirome sat on his usual spot, enjoying a refreshing drink after finishing his shift at the command deck. Like most days, he visited the officer's lounge to relax for some time and perhaps exchange words with other officers. It was a good way to keep tabs on the day-to-day activities across the ship and the divisions. He'd learned from experience that any commanding officer who distanced themselves from the activities, opinions, and lives of those aboard a ship other than his own was bound for failure and catastrophe. Granted, he wasn't a commanding officer anymore, but old habits died hard, and good habits were worth keeping alive. A first lieutenant he was, a far cry from his previous rank, but one that he was at peace with, especially as it quelled the lingering doubts his fellow head officers had of him prior to the battle against the dreaded Drazan. You moved first yet again, Sabraska. Is it courage or something else that drives you so? Saraton Deshire asked, sitting next to her brother, casually taking a sip from her fine whiskey. The music was soft and pleasant, just loud enough to give them a sense of comfort and privacy. Sabraska smiled at the blonde woman. Have you started to regret your lack of action, Saratan? Or are you perhaps showcasing your disapproval? Neither, Saraton replied, causing the midnight-colored-haired woman to raise an eyebrow. I'm only making an observation at your apparent lack of self-preservation. To approach that man so brazenly? I'm surprised he didn't simply push you aside. Galt couldn't help himself. Far from it, Saraton. It is well within my knowledge that Wyatt Staples welcomed the aid granted to him by our esteemed Logistical Division's head officer candidly. He was genuinely grateful for the support given, he said, managing to widen Sabraska's smile even more and cause Saraton's eye to twitch in irritation. It matters little, I do suppose, Saraton continued. Wyatt Staples is a dangerous man. Valuable, but dangerous. I cannot fathom why you so vehemently try to gain his attention, Kaspars. So far, he's shown remarkable self-control, as far as his lust is concerned. An anomaly among available bachelors, but not a rare one. Given his position, I doubt he'll see in you an appealing choice. It is most bold of you to assume that is my end goal, Deshire. I simply wish to demonstrate to the young Baron my skills, and that I can be someone he can rely upon. A willing cooperator, a reliable contact, a useful acquaintance. Who knows? Maybe a friend or a trusted ally if I play my cards right. Sabraska countered, never losing her smile. You speak as if it is a given that he'll grow in power further still. His advancement has been monumental, this I admit. But more than the present? I cannot fathom that to become a reality in the near future, Saraton replied. Though her words lacked her usual focused certainty, it was as if she were trying to convince herself more than anyone else. Regardless, she reached into her uniform to produce a finely decorated letter. But I'm not witless, nor am I a coward. I've prepared a personal congratulatory letter for the Baron alongside a small token of my support. It will be delivered at the end of today's activities. He won't say more than a passing greeting, you know this, Lupin Lusanto exclaimed, gaining a glare from Fabian Deshire, Saraton's brother. He ignored the muscular man as he continued. Baron Staples is a commoner at heart. He holds high esteem with Her Majesty, but he lacks class and education. He paused only to take a sip from his blue, sparkling beverage. Then he produced a simplistic letter of his own. However, caution always favors those blessed with superior minds. I'll send him a general message. No more than that, Fabian confessed. I don't wish to know him more than what I've seen. Call my decision irrational or foolhardy, I care not. The further I can stay from that man, the better. You're afraid of him? Sabraska asked, surprised as everyone, even Saraton, was. I'm astonished by the fact that you aren't. How could you not? After what he's done? Fabian shook his head. I wish to remain in cordial terms with Baron Staples, but nothing beyond that point. His position of grandeur be damned, for I wish nothing from him. Brother, you've never told me any of this. What has spurred such a decision? Saraton asked, placing a hand on her brother's. Dangerous he may be, both in person and by association, but to withdraw yourself completely from such an opportunity? I prefer it this way, Saraton, was Fabian's cryptic yet straightforward answer. Baron Staples and everything he implies set aside, tell me, Fabian, how is your coordination with our additional marine and auxilia elements going? Galt asked, deciding to change the subject. The officers aboard are sufficient and well-trained. Even the auxilia elements are a welcome addition to our forces. Fortunately, Francesco Arcadi and his mercenary rabble have proven themselves. We won't suffer the absence of proper Royal Army elements in the meantime. The Acanti Auxilia, on the other hand, are outside my usual expertise. I've never been close to so many aliens before. It is a jarring experience, Fabian replied. They have their uses, Lupin added. They can be diligent and useful. I ask for nothing more, I care for nothing else. Filthy Xenos they are, but welcomed by Her Majesty. That is enough to rest my concerns. I've never disliked the Acanti too much. They prove themselves to be useful, Sabraska contributed. Especially the one named Jincho, she said, much to the red-eyed man's displeasure. I've already coordinated schedules with the Reaper's Eye and the Reaper's Blade and reviewed their manifestos. Her Highness's ships will not be found wanting. All preparations are ready. That was all Saraton was willing to divulge. Galt nodded, enjoying the rest of his drink as the conversation shifted to more banal topics of interest. A few hours later, the Noir Navio and its 2 escorts reached the designated jump point. Moments later, they were gone, leaving the Hastrung system behind.